Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Thanks for joining. We see people starting to stream in. We're going to start the webinar in about 30 seconds. 30 seconds, we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. It's just a little bit after 11. It's November 14th. My name is Michael Egerling. I lead marketing here at Trustero. We're here to talk to you about how compliance AI tools and Aero, our AI co-pilot, plus excellent certified auditors like Prescient Assurance, can team up to really melt away the thrash that comes with the compliance process. I have several people here with me today. The people that are going to be speaking on the session today is Scott Knufer. He's our VP of Operations at Trustero. We have Sammy Chowdhury, who's the co-founder and CEO of Prescient Assurance, and Brian Grauzos, who's the Director of Engagement Quality at Prescient Assurance. So you're going to be hearing from all those people today. We also have a few of our team members at Trustero on the line. You can see their faces right now, and they're going to be helping to answer questions in the chat. So if you would like to ask a question, the best way to do that is with the Q&A item down there in the tray in Zoom. So just click that and ask a question. Last time we did one of these, we had more questions than we could get to in the actual session. So we're going to be trying to answer questions as they come in. Sometimes they're a bit complicated, so we have to kind of like take some time to answer the questions. If we don't get to your question live, we will get to it in the follow-up email that we'll be sending out a few hours after this live webinar session. So with that, let's get into the agenda and talk about what we're going to be talk about what we're going to talk about today. So in a second, I'll pass the mic over to the Prescient Assurance team and they'll introduce themselves. Then Brian is going to walk us through 6 best practices for acing your audit. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about who Trustero is and how we work with auditors to help you cut out compliance thrash. And then we'll show our AI co-pilot Aero and talk a little bit about how that's changed and progressed since the last time we showed it, which was in the last webinar that we did a couple months ago. And then Scott's actually going to walk through 4 to 6. Well, we're going to show you 6, and then we're going to actually live demo 4 features that are part of Aero. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to Sammy Chowdhury, who's the CEO and co-founder of Prescient Assurance, to give us a little bit of overview on his company.
All right, thanks a lot, Michael. So Sammy here, nice to meet you all. Prescient Security and Assurance, as a brand, we're a global cybersecurity company and audit firm. We are fortunate to be trusted by over 3,000 customers that are SaaS, primarily SaaS and PaaS and other cloud-based technology companies. We have been in the business for over 10 years now, in 3 different continents. We cover a lot of ground in terms of compliance, certifications, so SOC 2, PCI, High Trust, ISO, as well as soon to be on FedRAMP. So we cover a lot of ground from, traditional cloud security, cybersecurity, as well as privacy, which you will see on the next slide here. In terms of the number of frameworks that we cover today, it's over 25 of them. Yep. Yeah, just to give you kind of an outline of the number of control frameworks that we cover, from SOC 2, which is very popular in the US, to ISO in Europe, as well as any federal compliance certifications related to CMMC or FedRAMP. State RAMs will be providing support for those in the new year. We currently cover a lot of privacy regulations on the right, GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, and so on and so forth, with the help of the Trustero team here, and they will go in detail. Yep, over to you, Brian.
All right, so I'm going to go over some best practices for acing your audits and things I've seen. I've been on both sides, both as a internal resource for a company that does audits and an external resource doing audits. So I've kind of seen both sides of things. I'm going over to the first slide. One of the things that I am pretty passionate about in this world is that the focus on good security practices, not just on compliance. We want to make sure controls alone don't address are the things that are addressing your security risk. You need to understand the risks, the impacts to your environment and your business, and make sure you put the right controls in place to mitigate risk to a suitable level based on your business needs. And you want to make sure those are efficient, and we'll talk more about that in another slide here. But you also want to be aware of a false sense of security. A lot of times people look at compliance as the be all end all security when really it's just a baseline report card that you have trust that you're doing at least some modicum of security. It's not necessarily the right security practices that make sense for your business. Next slide, please. So as I was saying, we want to draft controls that align with your business needs and objectives. You want to make sure you understand what risks your business is actually facing, what kind of data you're trying to protect, and what your clients' expectations are. And make sure you put the right controls in place to achieve those objectives. And if you do that, most of the time, you're going to have good audit results. Having efficient controls that are prone to failure is also another common problem. Sometimes people put controls in place that are best practice when they don't make sense in certain environments. You should really be evaluating the types of controls you put in place and make sure that they're really aligning to what your team can handle and what the objectives that you're trying to cover are, so that you're addressing the risk, but you're also not building in controls that are going to fail and end up with bad audits.
Hey, Brian, can you give us an example of controls that didn't align, maybe from a hypothetical client in the past, controls that didn't align with needs and objectives?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have controls that have unreasonable SLAs. That's a common problem, right? Like you'll see controls that'll say like we remove terminations within an hour. That's really hard to consistently do, especially from an audit perspective, right? And if you say that, and we test it and they're past an hour, you're going to have exceptions in your report that can lead to a qualified opinion on a SOC 2 or other problems with PCI or whatever. So you want to make sure that you have controls that really are functional and meet what your team can handle. And with a small business, that's even more critical because you have a lot of hats you have to wear. So properly defining scope. This is a big part of doing audits, right? We need to know what's in scope, what controls need to apply to what areas, and make sure that that's properly defined. And this really becomes important when you have multiple frameworks you're adhering to. PCI, for instance, has credit card data. That's typically the scope. If you segmented off your credit card environment away from your other environments, you don't want to be audited in all those other environments as part of your PCI audit. Understanding SOC 2 could come into scope for like business lines and things like that. So as you scale your business up, there may be different areas that come in or out of scope, and we want to make sure we have the right controls for each of those areas to align with those client needs and the data that you're protecting in those environments. We don't want to leave key items out of scope. That can lead to exceptions in your report. Getting creative with scoping, that causes problems when we have to bring something in and controls weren't applied. If they were expected to be in place that whole time, that can cause problems in your report. Make sure you include people, processes, and technology. Common problem here is we run scans. Scans cover everything, so we don't have to look at anything else. But that's usually only one component of your audit. So make sure you understand all the different nuances of controls and scope and how they all fit together to achieve audit success. So you want to maintain good audit evidence and make sure you have it ready for audit. This will just make for a more efficient audit in general, less impact to your team. But if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist from our perspective, right? Like we can't just take your word. We have to trust but verify. So we have to make sure the evidence is suitable and it shows evidence that the control functioned as it was intended to function throughout the period. Time is often wasted trying to show how a control functioned. You should kind of go into the control when you design them and create them, knowing how you're going to show evidence that that control actually operated as intended, so that when we ask for evidence, you know exactly what you should be providing, and you can work with your audit partner as you do that to make sure that you have the right expectations set up front. And it's time intensive going back and forth with auditors to generate evidence. You know, we ask for something you can't provide, we have to go find something else. That's time that you're not spending being productive and improving your products and your business. So we want to limit that as much as possible and make for a nice, smooth, efficient audit.
Hey, another follow-up, Brian. So why exactly is it important to maintain strong evidence even when you're not in an audit period?
Yeah, it goes back to if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist, right? Like if you don't have evidence of the control functioning throughout the entire period, which is what we're going to test, then we're going to have exceptions or problems with the audit. Your expectation for like a SOC 2, for instance, which is my primary focus, is that for the entire period, which could be 12 months or more, you can prove that a control operated as intended throughout that entire period. And I'd even recommend going a few months over just in case the period gets extended a bit. You don't lose things like audit logs or other critical data that might be important to have for the auditors as you're investigating potential issues and things like that. You don't want to lose evidence that's going to cause you to have issues with your reporting.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to the next one.
So you want to plan and prepare to support the audit. You don't want to make this like an ad hoc thing. You just kind of react whenever requests come in. Ideally, year over year, you'd really have a good game plan on what did we provide last year, what do we need to provide this year, what are the auditors going to look for, who are we going to have talking to the auditors, make sure they're available, and make sure that they can accurately define the control environment. You don't want people getting on calls, and I've experienced this on both sides, where they get on the calls, they don't really know what they're talking about, they say the wrong things, the auditor's flags go up, we come back and ask more questions, and then we get clarification. Starts breaking down that trust between the audit firm and the client. And then we end up having to look deeper than we really wanted to and that you want us to get to the end result, right? So having a nice, clean, efficient process on both sides really makes this a smooth transition for from start to finish. And you want to make sure you show controls accurately and remember the goal of the audit. You don't want to have incorrect statements in your system description, your ROC if you're doing PCI or any other audit report. You want to really articulate what you're doing. That's your messaging to your clients on how you treat security and how you take their data seriously. You're building trust with your clients through this process. You want to apply controls across the entire period. You don't want to be changing controls mid-period if you can avoid it. If you do, you want to engage with your audit partner, make sure that you're talking that through and making sure all the impacts are addressed and no additional risk is created. You don't want to avoid any major changes like platform changes, product changes, anything that could cause a major change in testing approach, because any gap in that period is going to be scrutinized due to the increased risk and the nature of the impacts to the reporting. So you want to make sure you're proactively engaging with your audit partner on that as well to make sure that you discuss how you can do that, when is the appropriate time to do that, and make sure that you address any potential risks or report or audit impacts that need to be considered as part of those changes.
I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit, Brian, on the goal of the audit. Maybe since you've been through so many of these, could you tell us about what it looks like when someone does stray away from the goal of the audit, or just help us understand that a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the first point, right? Like your clients are getting these reports to build trust and to know that you take their data seriously. If you just focus on just getting a piece of paper to show them you don't take the description seriously or the control seriously or security seriously, that's going to reflect to your client that you don't take them seriously. So for me, you really want to make sure that you're taking the report and the objective of having good security in place and our reasonable assurance validation of that as not only a marketing tool to your client, but also a trust relationship that you're trying to implement with everyone you do business with.
That's a great answer. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the everything on the screen here. And Sammy, anything you want to add to this, or we're looking at all of the best practices?
Yeah, I think it's important to spend time thinking about your audit goals. Do you just want to get a piece of paper, as Brian said, out to your client? It might do more harm than help in the long run. So audit is really an independent assessment of your security and control posture. So, in order for this to be effective, it needs to be independent, right? An audit is not an audit if it's not independent. And two, you want to work with the audit partner, the compliance automation partner, such as Trustero, to make sure that your controls are reflected well, your evidence is uploaded, the correct evidence is uploaded on the correct sort of cadence, so that there are no gaps and unnecessary exceptions and findings and modification of reports that are happening at the end. So we work proactively with your team. The compliance automation tool will help us get that visibility to you as well. So you should definitely take a look at Trustero to see if that meets your needs, because you want to have eyes on all of these things, the people, process, and technology, and things change as much as we would like to see things staying the same, but your business will change. If you're a rapidly growing company, you should be able to keep track of all the changes and the risks and the controls that you need.
Perfect. And I should just add that these will be available. We'll send out these best practices with these slides after the webinar, and then you'll also have a chance to take down Sammy and Brian's contact information at the end of the presentation, and we'll include it in the after action email that gets sent out. Okay, so really appreciate that, Sammy and Brian. Let's move on to the Trustero section here. So I'm going to give a little bit of overview of who Trustero is, what we're all about, and then Scott's going to actually show you some live demo of what Trustero does and how our AI works. And so we are a GRC platform with a focus in compliance. We're the first GRC platform to build native AI through large language models into our tool. And what that does, what we're going to show you a little bit later when we show you Arrow, our co-pilot, is it really adds a lot of rigor and scale to GRC teams, right? GRC teams are always looking for, a little bit more time, a little bit more ability, a little bit more just capacity to get things done. And that's where our co-pilot really comes into its own. One of the ways that we like to show this is this convergence of three things that make our tool really strong and really make it what it is. And so in the past, the way compliance was done, it was done on spreadsheets, right? And it was done with people and with expertise. And then at one point we had readiness tools and compliance automation platforms start to proliferate as well. And what you started to see is this readiness plus consulting approach to getting compliance done, to getting a SOC 2 or an ISO or an NIST compliant or anything like that. And these are big, complicated processes, and this helped a lot. What Trustero has done is it's added AI to that mix. And the way that comes to life is in Arrow. Arrow is our AI co-pilot that is basically been born and built and taught by our in-house GRC experts, and then also has access to the universe of security compliance knowledge that's out there. And all that converges to help our customers do a lot more on their own and do a lot more very quickly and add scale and rigor and visibility and availability to their GRC teams. And Scott's going to cover that in much more detail in a moment here. So like I said, everything we do with Arrow, our AI co-pilot, is around those four things: visibility, scale, rigor, and availability. And in the next slide, as Scott takes over, you're actually going to see those words pop up to show, like, when we built this feature, we were thinking about how do we add more scale to the GRC team. When we built tools for auditors, we thought this is all four of those things: visibility, scale, rigor, and availability. So those are really our guiding light when we're going out and we're building Arrows. How do we make teams better, and how do we make them benefit in these four ways? Scott, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Brian and Sammy. First, I want to just say thank you for you all joining this webinar. We started Trustero because we were super frustrated ourselves in just how messy the process can be, just how much challenge it can insert into our organizations. Many of us had experience with, audit firms that didn't go well, or maybe we had an audit firm that didn't help us understand the process, or maybe we used a readiness tool that the audit firm wasn't really embedded in to help the process go smoothly. And so what you're now seeing is our vision come to life, where we have the very best partners in audit firms that understand how our readiness state or our AI platform works, that helps give your organization the ultimate preparedness or scale when it comes to your audit. So thank you to our Prescient partners for being on this call today. Next slide, Michael. So AI has been now littered throughout the Trustero app. We are focused on giving our clients real answers for their environment in the moment. And AI is the key to doing that. The first thing I want to talk about is our compliance roadmap feature. Compliance roadmap was built because we recognized it can be challenging to understand the most valuable next step that you need to take in your compliance journey. Arrow, as Michael pointed out, which is our AI compliance tool is just littered throughout this platform, where again, Arrow is pointing you to the answers you need or the next step in this compliance roadmap process. So whether you're at the very beginning in initial scoping or at the very end trying to understand your audit readiness, Arrow will give you that next step that you need in order to get to your audit and sail through your audit. Next, Michael. Receptors. So one of the biggest challenges that you may have with your audit is actually collecting evidence and collecting proper evidence to a control. Lots of readiness tools in this space will talk about the number of integrations that they may have. What you don't know is just how hard it is to connect all of that evidence to the proper control. Brian mentioned this in one of his bullet points, is making sure that the proper proof or evidence is showing. Now, a receptor in the Trustero platform is different than just an integration that you may hear about from others. So, Michael, if you click there on the AWS receptor and actually show automatable controls, what you're seeing here now is an integration into AWS as an example, and the number of controls where evidence is being automatically mapped to that control, then satisfying a huge portion of what you will have to connect to that control as part of your audit. So again, the frustration is I may not have the expertise to understand exactly what this control is asking me to do from an objective standpoint. The Trustero AI will go out and collect exact evidence for you. Tools for auditors. This is a big one because we think that when an auditor gets involved and starts to take a look at the work you did in your chosen platform, I hope it's Trustero, they should have the tools and visibility that they need into the different pieces of work that you've done, the policies that you've built out, the controls and evidence that you've mapped. They should be able to communicate with you in that platform through building out request lists for additional or augmented information. So we've spent a large amount of time making sure that that communication structure is built into the Trustero platform to, again, give you scale. Tailored guidance. This is huge because I didn't have a huge background in GRC or compliance when I joined Trustero. I had, like many of you, maybe a very light understanding, or maybe I'd been involved in a few audits. I knew how frustrating it was being assigned a control or a policy to manage and not know exactly what I needed to do as part of that audit. Trustero Compliance AI, Arrow, does tailor guidance for every single control that is a part of your audit. And I'll share with you here what that looks like. So most platforms will give you a very general look at what you need to do in order to satisfy a control. Trustero, because Arrow understands your environment, the tools you use, the technology that you use, we will tailor step-by-step guidance for how you need to satisfy that control. We'll give you the list of evidence that you probably need to have as part of satisfying that control. And then we'll suggest any tests that may be valid for that control. This is unique for this space. So, and again, all built around limiting the amount of time or expertise that you need to have as an individual to manage your compliance. The biggest one, I think, is our audit scan feature. We launched this in September. I love how our team here talks about our audit scan feature. Arrow doesn't get tired. It doesn't make mistakes. It understands very clearly the work you've done and audits and compares the work you've done to the objectives that you need to achieve, much like a human auditor would. So Michael here is going to show a completed audit scan. So if you go ahead and click on that there, Michael, just like a human, when you're looking at, am I prepared or not, Arrow is going to go through and look at all of the things that will add up to, are you ready or not? So as an example, do you have all of your services connected? Are your controls mapped properly to your policies? On the flip side, do policies, are they linked to the proper controls? Is my company info complete? And do I have the right coverage for the framework that I'm expecting to cover? So am I addressing all of the things within SOC 2 as an example in this example? Do my risks and my risk register, are they treated? Do I have I accepted all of those treatment plans? And then finally, are the requests that maybe my auditor had for me as supplemental requests on controls, are they satisfied? If all of that is properly done, then Arrow is going to move on and it's going to actually start to look control by control. And it's going to compare control objective to what you've prepared on that control. So as an example, if Michael clicks on change management here, it is going to actually, Arrow is going to look at the evidence, the policy, and the control objective and say, am I satisfying that control and every other one? If I've got all green checks, I'm pretty confident that I can hand this audit over to Sammy and Brian or the auditor of your choice to then go start the audit. Because again, Arrow is giving you the ultimate preparedness thumbs up. And then finally, we do have another feature. I often joke that if you ever are having trouble sleeping at night, just put a report scan, or I'm sorry, a SOC 2 report on your bedside table and start to read it. It will make you tired. It will put you to sleep. So for a couple of, for a little bit of fun, we actually built a feature where Arrow will read SOC 2 reports for you. This is really valuable, especially as you grow. And, you know, we've got some clients that have hundreds and hundreds of these reports that they're reviewing a quarter. And so being able to read those reports, evaluate them for them, and give them kind of a Cliff Notes review is super valuable. So these are just some of the AI features within the Trustero application. We are constantly growing our solution set. I'll give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek. We are going to talk on our next webinar about how AI can help with things like security questionnaire answering and security questionnaire evaluation. So lots more AI coming from Trustero.
I was muted. Okay. Yeah, that's a great little tease there, Scott, because I mean, just having these four words on the screen, visibility, rigor, scale, availability, as we go out and our team starts to tackle, you know, how AI can help with security questionnaires, I don't think there's a better example of how we are adding scale and availability. So just the scale to be able to answer these things quickly and to be able to allow your team to do more with less, and just availability, having your team around to do more strategic work because they're not spending hours and hours answering nuanced security questionnaires when Arrow can do it for them. So with that said, you will have an opportunity to sign up for that webinar in the email that comes out today. And then if you missed that email, just head over to our website at any given time and you'll be able to see the sign up for the next webinar. We're going to do that on the second week of December. I believe it's December 12th. It's a Tuesday, and that's when we're going to show off our security questionnaire, our Aero AI security questionnaire capabilities. We're getting close to being at time here, so I want to make sure that we respect everybody's time and stay under our 30-minute limit. You're going to see everybody's names up on screen. So if you have questions for Sammy or Brian or Scott or the Trustero team, go ahead and just hit us up via email. If you'd like to see a demo of Trustero, we would absolutely love to show you one, and we'd love to show it to you with Prescient Assurance so that we can get all of your questions answered. You can schedule that with the QR code or the link on screen, and we'll absolutely give you the ability to do that in the email that goes out to everybody here as well. If you were watching on LinkedIn Live, you didn't get the opportunity to answer questions because there's just no way to do that through LinkedIn Live when we're broadcasting here through Zoom. So ask your questions of the team when you get the recap email that comes out later today. You can just reply straight to us, and the Prescient team or the Trustero team will get your questions answered promptly. With that, I'll leave this on screen for a few minutes, but I'll let the team go. So if you guys need to take screenshots or get the email address or get the QR code, you can do that. And we're really looking forward to seeing everybody again in December when we talk about AI security questionnaire. Thanks very much.